This video is an overview of the different ways that I paint rock. If you're painting representationally, then you need to look for an udder. In the case of a cow, it's the udder. Even if that cow has leopard spots on it, you can still recognize it as a cow. A giraffe has a long neck. Trees have trunks and branches. Does a rock have udder? Here we have something that is questionable. Is this a rock or is this a dog? This is actually called the dancing bear, but I don't think they remember what bears look like in England. Do rocks have udder? Neutral colors usually, cracks often, texture varied, shape extremely varied, surroundings like trees and lakes help you say rock. The key when you're doing rocks is random. Another difficulty in painting rocks is local color versus form color. Local color is the actual color of the rock under normal daytime lighting. The form color is what gives us the idea of the shape, the shadows and the highlights. In this picture you can see that the red and gray rock shown by the arrow is under daylight and is quite different than in the foreground where we have the shadowed rock. We also can get some darker colors where the water meets the rock and the water can actually darken the rock. One of the next things you want to do is vary the cracks. Solid even lines around a rock make it look like a cartoon. Try some wide lines that actually represent a shadowed side of the rock. Some narrow lines that taper from zero back to wide. Scores in rock are where glaciers have scratched into the rock surface and are very shallow, and you can represent that with the same color, just slightly darker, or just generally a slightly darker color. To show a deeper crack, take it from a light color into a darker color as you move deeper into the crack. Use all the different colors that you've used in the rock. Shadows are not devoid of color. Use line direction. This is a really good way to show the shape of the rock. If the rock is going down a curve, you curve the line. If it's laying flat on a surface, try to keep the line more horizontal. Let that line describe the rock. In this photo, you can see samples of the actual cracks. This is one going from thick to thin. This is actually the side of a rock where you can see the larger shadow. And this last arrow is pointing to some very faint cracks. These are brush marks made with a rigger. The first one, a skid, is actually where using the rigger on its side and sliding it along and getting a nice array of random marks. All the others are a mix of coming up on the point and pushing down on the rigger. So we start on the point and we push down and we get a nice broad line. Or we come in and we push down and we lift up. That's with a number 6. And so this is a number 1. Just hold that. We'll just pull along and push down. So that's a fully loaded brush. So it's, and then we're going to push down. And gradually come up. So we'll take some of that. So now we've got a nearly empty brush. And so we can start off with a fairly thin line. Gets even thinner, and as the line gets thinner, it's harder to see that transparency that you can see. This is a very transparent color. This is just a mix of pushing down and lifting up. This painting, done on watercolor paper but using acrylic paints, was all the lines you see in here were created with the rigger as shown in the samples on the previous slide. Watercolor paper gives you the ability to do fast, energetic strokes with very thin paint. You can add a water absorbent medium to your canvas, which will make the canvas behave a little bit more like watercolor paper, but nowhere near as good. Here we have an extreme close-up of the same subject matter where the painting was done with acrylics on canvas. This is a full view and the different steps used to create that. With the dark paint, I quickly sketched in the major areas of the painting, and then with the thinned paint, blocked in the colors on top of that drawing. The paint was thin enough so I could still see the drawing through. Using a knife, I then laid down different textured colors, going from darker towards lighter. Using a rigger, the details in the rocks were painted in with a dark color and various other colors, and then finishing the rest of the painting. This is my preferred knife and the texture that I can get using that knife. To get this texture, I load the knife both sides very evenly, just a thin coat of paint. The paint is then applied to the surface, holding the knife parallel to the surface. When the knife is freshly loaded, you use a light pressure, and as the paint is used up, you apply more pressure. You can flip the knife over and use the paint on the other side. Laying different colors on top of each other, working from the dark to the light to build the texture. Sliding it sideways. And come back, and so we got, when it's first loaded, it leaves a pretty heavy line. We'll switch back to the number 6. And you can roll it. These are different sample paintings using the knife to create the texture on the rock. The knife was used not only to create the texture in the rock, but also adding rock texture through adding the snow, both in the blue and in the white. In sedimentary rock, like the Niagara Escarpment, I prefer to use the flat color approach. Blocking in the different colors of the darks and lights of the escarpment, and then gradually adding detail going from the darks towards the light. Each time I'm doing short strokes representing a fracture in the rock. In this close-up, you can see the short strokes and how the cracks are created by the darker color in behind each stroke. These are some samples using the flat color approach. There is some blending used as well as a little bit of scumbling. Blending one wet color into another is a great way to get subtle shifts in color. The arrows pointing to a beautiful range of subtle color shifts. Glazing is a great way to add detail and patina to a rock. In this particular painting, the whole canvas was painted a off-white color using yellow ochre and white. Then using a pencil or graphite, I sketched in the different rock shapes. These had to be sealed with medium before the painting could be continued. Additional lines were added with the rigger in different colors. After this was dried, very thin down acrylic paint was allowed to run down the canvas, creating the patina on the rock. These are other sample paintings where I've used that watered down acrylic paint to create the stains running down the rock surface. I never use medium, only water-thinned acrylic. If you've heard people tell you not to thin acrylics with water, stop listening to the Kool-Aid drinkers and watch my video on using water with acrylic.